Hi, I'm the History Guy. I have a degree in history and I love history. And if you love history too, this is the channel for you. 40 years ago this summer, 4 lightning strikes within an hour on critical electrical subsystems would leave the United States' largest city without power for 25 hours. The events that followed showed both the best and the worst of human nature, represented the challenges of the time, and forever changed the future of New York City. At 8:37 p.m. on July 13, 1977, a lightning bolt struck a critical substation along the Hudson River in Westchester County, New York. Within an hour, 3 other lightning bolts would strike critical lines. Efforts by Consolidated Edison to shed power failed, and a cascade of blown critical breakers cut the city of New York off from the nation's power grid. The city went dark at 9:34 p.m. This was not the first time that New York City had lost power. In November of 1965, a major power outage had struck the American Northeast all the way up into Canada. It was the largest power outage in the history of the United States. And during that event, New York had remained relatively calm, even somewhat festive. There were less than 100 arrests for crimes committed during the 1965 blackout. It was even the setting for the 1968 comedy film with Doris Day called Where Were You When the Lights Went Out? But 1977 was different. The first reports of looting came into police stations within 10 minutes of the power going out. And by the time the power came back on, more than 1,600 stores had been looted and more than 1,000 fires had been set by arson. 35 blocks of Broadway were destroyed. Thousands of people were injured, including 550 police officers. A congressional investigation determined that the costs of the looting and fires alone exceeded $300 million. New York City Mayor Abe Beame called it a night of terror. Compared to 1965, when less than 100 people were arrested, more than 3,700 people were arrested for looting. The jails were overfilled. The police were swamped. So why was 1977 so different? Well, the mid-1970s were a difficult time in New York City. Years of deficit spending and a nationwide economic downturn following the energy crisis in 1973 had brought the city to the verge of bankruptcy in 1975. The city's credit rating had been declining since the mid-1960s, and in 1975 they could no longer find creditors who were willing to purchase their bonds. The state and federal government stepped in to rescue the city, but only under the promise that the city get its financial situation in order. In order to balance the budget, the city shed 50,000 city employees in 1975 alone. City services from libraries to garbage removal were cut back while fees were increased. Between 1975 and 1980, the New York City Police Department shrunk by 34%, while crime rose by more than 40%. The nationwide economic downturn and recession in the mid-1970s, combined with broader trends like white flight and deindustrialization, had struck New York City particularly hard. In 1975, unemployment in New York City was a staggering 12%, and 2 years later, in 1977, it was still hovering around double digits. The city's economic promise had seemed to fade, and in its wake came the crime that was bred from despair. New York City's crime index doubled between the mid-1960s and mid-1970s. There were 830 violent crimes per 100,000 persons in New York City in 1977. That number had been just 409 a decade earlier. In 1977, there were an estimated 40,000 prostitutes in New York City and 200,000 heroin abusers. In addition to its economic woes, the city was in the midst of a terrible heat wave when the power killed the air conditioning in July of 1977. Over a 10-day period, the average high temperature in New York City was 97.1 degrees. That's 15 degrees above normal, and is still the hottest heat wave in the history of New York City. And the city was on edge in fear of a single criminal, the self-named Son of Sam. The vicious murderer had been committing random murders in New York City since July of 1976, and by 1977 had murdered 6 people and wounded 7 others. He had eluded the largest manhunt in the history of New York City, and so people were both gripped by terror and losing faith in their police force. The criminal, David Berkowitz, would be apprehended August 10th, less than a month after the blackout. To be clear, it was not all terror that night. Much of New York remained calm and reacted much as they had in 1965. New Yorkers pulled together. Thousands of people volunteered to help, for example, directing traffic or helping people navigate dark stairwells or distributing candles and flashlights. In some places, it was even a festive atmosphere where bars remained open all night, serving liquor even though they couldn't serve food. Millions of New Yorkers didn't even know about the rioting and looting until the next day. And despite all the mayhem, some sort of unwritten agreement between the police and the looters prevented escalation, and so in all of the chaos, only 2 people were killed. The impact on the city was significant, and many residents woke up to know that their neighborhoods would be forever changed. Many of the shops that had been looted or burned never reopened. The violence changed politics in the city as the appearance of being out of control destroyed Mayor Beam's hopes for re-election and catapulted a relatively unknown candidate, Congressman Ed Koch, to win the mayoral election in the fall. He had run to the right of other Democratic candidates on a law and order platform. And while Mayor Koch's 11 years in office were controversial, he did help to restore the city's financial stability and rebuild much of the damage from the looting in 1977. Although crime rates in New York City would not reduce back to the levels of the early 1960s until 40 years later in the early 2000s. One interesting claim is made by hip-hop music pioneer Grandmaster Caz, who argues that the looting that occurred in the 1977 blackout helped to catapult the hip-hop music craze to popularity by allowing more aspiring DJs and rappers to acquire music equipment. According to online streaming service Spotify, hip-hop music is the most popular genre in the world today. In the end, the response to the blackout in 1977 was the result of a culmination of many factors and long-term economic trends whose impacts were magnified in the largest city in the United States. But it is still startling how just 4 lightning strikes could be such a trigger. And it begs the question, was this explosion avoidable absent just one summer thunderstorm? Or was it inevitable? In any case, it was worth remembering. I'm the History Guy. Hope you enjoyed this edition of my series, 5 Minutes of History, short snippets of forgotten history, 5 to 10 minutes long. And if you did enjoy, please go ahead and click that thumbs up button that is there on your left. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to write those in the comment section and I will be happy to respond. And if you'd like 5 minutes more of forgotten history, all you need to do is click the subscribe button that is there on your right.